All right. Are we speeding? I think we're good. We've already had a wonderful prologue from Bob. I'm going to be very brief here and just remind you, of course, he is an engineer, an entrepreneur, a leading voice in low-energy nuclear reactions, and best known, of course, for his pioneering work with the Martin Flesch Memorial Project, and so much more. And this year, of course, he is bringing so many ideas to the table that are going to challenge conventional technologies and our worldview in so many ways. Again, I can't think of a better way to frame this than simply to say that he is a truly compelling speaker, as you already know and have heard, and his work aligns powerfully with the transformative themes of the Cosmic Summit. Please make welcome Bob Greenyer.
Okay, thanks for joining me here in the Yang Room. We're going to be having an awesome conference. This, I can honestly say, last year was the best conference I've ever been to. Thank you. If you came, who came last year? Whoa, that's a lot of return victims. Okay, so are you ready? Round like a circle in a spiral, like a wheel within a wheel, never ending or beginning on an ever spinning reel, like a snowball down a mountain or a carnival balloon, like a carousel that's turning, running rings around the moon, like a clock whose hands are sweeping past the minutes of its face, and the world is like an apple whirling silently in space, like the circles that you find in the windmills of your mind, like a tunnel that you follow to a tunnel of its own, down a hollow to a cavern where the sun has never shone, like a door that keeps revolving in a half-forgotten dream, or the ripples from a pebble someone tosses in the stream, like a clock whose hands are sweeping past the minutes of its face, and the world is like an apple whirling silently in space, like the circles that you find in the windmills of your mind. Right. So the first one is about, I believe, the technology. The second one is about what we're going to be talking about today. I think it's talking about black holes and teleportation. They're down tunnels to where light has never shone. This bit is about consciousness. We're not doing that today, sorry. You can go and see my thoughts on consciousness. And we'll finish off with like a circle in a spiral, like a wheel within a wheel, never ending or beginning on an ever spinning reel, as the images unwind, like the circles that you find in the windmills of your mind. Okay, so that was done in 1968, and it was written by lyrics by Marilyn and Alan Bergman. It's said to be a stream of consciousness. Who thinks that's the best kind of information pathway? If you're trying to interject yourself, your ego, into what you're trying to say, it's not pure thought. And that this came as a stream of consciousness, the lyrics, for me, says that it's actually telling you something fundamentally true about the universe. And it's not a surprise to me that it is being sung by so many people. But what is also very interesting is that it's 1968, and thank you to Michael Legrand for doing the score there. So why? Because around that time, if you remember last year, I told you about my father showing my siblings and I these four lights in the sky going and disappearing, okay? And I thought, well, okay, it was a lot later that I learned there may be some science and technology behind that. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today. So I'm going to ask you a question. How fast are you moving through space? Has anyone got an idea?
Really, really, really fast.
Any ideas?
Just with the orbital rotation, we're going about 800 miles an hour toward the east. And then you got to add our path around the sun,
The galaxy. And then when you look at it relatively, yeah, very good. We are going extremely, extremely fast. And not only that, when you look relatively to another galaxy, it's even possible that we could be going relative to them, and with the universe expansion, we can actually be going much faster than the speed of light. Already. So well done! Well done, you! But the thing is, this frame dragging, we're all moving along with the substance that everything else is supported and fed by. And so you don't feel it. But when you do feel it, it's when you get inertia. Right? When you're accelerating and decelerating, when you're trying to change your relative position with the material in which you're being moved by or dragged by, okay? So we don't need to be worrying about going very fast, okay? How do you perceive time? Anyone have a hash at that? Yes, how do you perceive time? Duration, okay, yeah. It's like, anyone else an idea? Thank you very much.
Relatively.
Relatively to what?
Every observer.
Okay.
We also preserve it linearly from each individual perspective.
Right. I'm going to ask you to think about those apples. Now, imagine they're not American apples. Imagine they're European apples. They are. What's going to happen to those apples? They'll rot. Okay, what is rotting? It's change, yes. But why is it changing?
Chemical reaction. Enzymes, chemical reaction.
Very good. What are chemical reactions? What are they fundamentally reliant on?
Electricity.
Very good. If I tapped you on the head for being a very, very good thinker, how would you feel that?
The magnetism, the electricity touching,
Very good. Electrons. The signal is traveled by electrons. In fact, everything that we observe, how we observe the passage of time, is through electron behavior. Whether that's chemicals transmitting information into our brain through our eyes, through our touch, or through the chemical reactions which are mediated by electron interactions as that decays. It doesn't matter whether it's doing it by a fungus or it's doing it by a worm or whatever. Okay? So, if we were to have a situation where we were going to go from point A to point B, we can change how we perceive the time. And how we would do that is to change the behavior of the electrons. And if we can make electrons do nothing, like in stasis, then there would be no time that we could perceive. Now that kind of happens with these bugs that go up into the atmosphere and they get frozen and they come down, and they might have been up in the upper atmosphere for like 10 years and they're reanimated as they come down. So think about that as we move forward. Okay, so Sir Isaac Newton, he's a famous alchemist, of course, very important to me. And he's better known for his gravity, motion laws, calculus, optics, reflecting telescope, and scientific revolution. Who feels inadequate? And the legend goes is that he thought about gravity because an apple dropped. Okay? The other thing is that the apple is said to be representative of the fruit of the tree of knowledge. It's not actually in the Bible. Okay? It's given that. Now, I would argue it's for the same reason, because the apple structure connects to how gravity works, and the apple structure is the secret embodied in a particular physical object of how much nature works also outside of gravity. So there is an apple shape that we observed in Binzhuan Huang's reactor. There are tens of thousands of these things. And this is in what I call the magnetohydrodynamic structure, which is also the sacred geometry structure. It is. I'm sorry for those that have an issue with the word sacred, but it is what people call the sacred geometry structure. It has the Vesica Pisces, the Chi Rho, all of the great symbols of power embedded into it. And this material, whatever it is able to go straight into that copper and bury itself 50% in. Inside it has two wheels within the outer apple structure. And I've done many presentations on this. I would encourage you to go to remote-view.icu or the volunteer project that I work with, Martin Fleischmann Memorial Project, and see it on their YouTube channel. Here is the basic structure. So you can see the two little wheels that I just showed you are the substructures, which are also apples. And then you have the big apple. So you have two little apples inside the big apple. So apple within apple. And here we go. This is what that leads to. It's called the fractal toroidal geometry. Again, go and look at last year. But this leads us to, in my belief, unlimited energy anywhere, faster than light propulsion, faster than light communication, teleportation, interaction with the Akashic record, and interaction with matter and consciousness. And for me, I've done most of these things. We're going to deal with teleportation here today. So how does it do this? There's one universal wide condensate, these relic neutrinos, they're elementary LC dipoles, inductor capacitor dipoles, and they share one wave function, which means if I put a thought into this superfluid material at any point in the universe, it's instantaneously available at every point in the universe inside all matter. because it's the same wave function. And you use the toroidal moment to put the information in there and to read it out. And the ancient Greeks, you can see how the ankh fits in. So the toroidal moment is the combination of all the different ways you can encode information. And it's actually that teardrop shape above the topological monopole, which is the blue bar bit in the center there. So all matter, ordinary vacuum objects such as a proton, electron, a neutrino, etc., they all breathe this relic neutrino condensate, which is at 1.95 Kelvin, and they get what energy they need from it. They only take what they need, and then they expel the relic neutrinos, which rejoin the condensate, the Borg. And then later, if they have too much energy and they've been excited for some other reason, they can expel that energy through their shell into the condensate. Okay, so that's an ordinary vacuum object, and we're all made of ordinary vacuum objects. The monopole, the topological monopole, this is a paper by Wisniewski in 2008. I'm in the process of translating this into English for you guys to make it easier. But essentially, a kind of monopole object is set up by the way electrons behave, and it ends up by cohering electrons in pairs, into Cooper pairs, and they end up in what's called a ring singularity. So they come down the plug hole to the phase singularity and create that ring where the electrons can't get any closer together, but they can build as Cooper pairs on top of each other, and so the magnetic strength vector through the center gets stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger. When you have three of these structures joining together, they do manipulation of matter. So we've got this in copper oxide in Henk Uren's experiment. I actually have the physical item here, and you'll be able to look at this on Monday under optical imaging and see some of these things and the structure. Not these particular ones, because this you need the magnification of an SEM. That one's on my dear departed friend Neil Crichton Gold's experiment, the top right, and the one on the left there is on Dr. Roy Shinamasa's vibrator plate, and you can see a vortical cavitation structure with two triangular holes in a steel plate, and in the corner of each of those triangles you've got a little round ball, which is the ball that forms in the center. There's your structure of an apple with a 5-order substructure. So you can see it literally shows you the pattern of how the universe works. It's so precise. And the apple part is the apple part of the apple. So an apple itself will have a field around it. Okay, so I gave a little talk about why I've chosen to do what I'm going to do today. It's because the bad guys already have it, the psychopaths already have it, and we need to level up the playing field. This is Andrei Puharich. I want you to listen and read exactly what he says.
Tesla discovered ways of making objects disappear. This we know. I know a guy who was from DuPont who was in charge of Navy battery construction and testing. And what they found out, they had batteries as big as this thing to run for submarines. That's what they did. And they had certain requirements that they had to, when they threw the switch and shorted out the two poles of the battery, all the plates and the electrodes and everything had to withstand the surge of 100,000 amperes. That's an awful lot of juice, right? So they would short this thing, and it was all set up in a way that nobody could get hurt. And they found out if there was a wrench left in a room or some piece of metal, it would suddenly vanish. Now this is ordinary workers, DC batteries and so on. Now Tesla did this, and they found out that metal would levitate, and a lot of other things, but the main thing was vanishing. Yeah. The man is alive, very reliable witness, top DuPont official. So anyway, there's another thing that Tesla did that nobody ever understood. He took 3 Tesla coils and placed them upright in a triangle. And when you surge the juice through them, it wasn't DC, now it was AC, that objects would float, and things like a wrench would get white hot, but you could pick it. It had no temperature, it was just white hot. I mean, it looked white hot, but it was white, but it wasn't hot. without energy. Anyway, this has been duplicated in Canada. A friend of mine that I'm going to see, I want to see how they're doing with the experiment. So that is part of the mechanism. I haven't explained, why an atom can exist here, a cluster of atoms, and then somehow flip into another space. We call it orthorotation, and they disappear, and they go somewhere else. And they tend to come back to the point of origin. It's like, they flip, they go out, and they come back.
Can anyone see where I'm going with this? You know what? I spoke to John Hutchison last night, and I'm very happy to report that he is healthy and well. And he said that he was working with Andrei Pucharish before he worked with George Hathaway and Alec Pizarro. Alec Pizarro was one person that literally went to see an object that was glowing a few seconds before, and he actually put his hand in and left his fingerprint in the aluminium. Okay? And this has been observed for ball lightning as well. So if you haven't read the work of Andrei Pucharish, it's really interesting. And in his book, he talks about there being a medium, he doesn't quite know what it is, where all conscious fields are able to interact. And he was the person that brought Uri Geller to the US. So a very accomplished man for his time. That's where I'm going. So there's this book called The Philadelphia Experiment Chronicles Commander X. There has been some discrediting or debunking of some of the people mentioned in here. I'm just going to, for the sake of argument, assume what they're saying is factual, or at least the best of their ability to report it. So the book came out in 1994, and it has a little UFO on there with some field lines on it. Very interesting. Anyway, so this is the USS Eldridge. It was involved apparently in the October 1943 Philadelphia experiment. Cannon-class destroyer, and I've got the scales there, approximately 306 feet, 102 yards long. Its beam, that's the width, was 12.1667 yards. It's actually quite a small ship. And its height from keel to masthead was approximately up to as much as 32.67 yards. So what I did is I looked at some of the things that were being said in that book, and one of them, there was this high 70-something watt diesel power generator and a pulse oscillator, and the guy that was doing the work, von Neumann, he produced a central rotating electromagnetic field at a critical frequency that interacted with a second time vector. This rotated the position of the time field in relation to the ship, and that was what allowed the ship to become invisible. Does that sound like what Andrei Pucharish was describing? The result was complete invisibility of the ship, destroyer type, and all of its crew while at sea. The field was effective in an oblate spheroidal shape. Why is that important? Because a ring singularity produces an event horizon which is an oblate spheroidal shape, which is the apple. An apple is an oblate spheroidal shape, extended 100 yards more or less out from each beam of the ship. Any person within the sphere became vague in form, but he too observed those persons aboard that ship as though they were of the same state, yet were walking upon nothing. Any person without the sphere could see nothing save clearly defined shape of the ship's hull in the water, providing, of course, that the person was just close enough to see, yet just barely outside of the field. So like on the transition boundary. So I thought I would model the ship in respect of the technology which we know seems to make things disappear. So I made a 3D model, and what you're seeing up in the top right there is the ship on its side. It's a bit like that one in North Korea, yeah? So imagine it like that. And I've just put the sacred geometry structure in there, and this absolutely blew me away in the testimony. Von Neumann used 4 huge Tesla coil devices. They were not the usual Tesla coils, but they were Tesla-built coils, conically shaped. Right? They were driven in pairs by the 75 kilowatt generators operating at fairly low frequency pulse. There were 4 RF transmitters, etc. So I took the pairs, either end of the ship, inside the volume of the ship where they could possibly be, and do you know what I found? That's my scale in the 3D modeling software, but it represents from the bow of the side of the ship to the edge of the apple field 99.64 yards, which is very close to about 100 yards. I was getting a bit freaked out now because I was thinking I can easily debunk this. And so what you have is that degenerate field there is called a Kernium and black hole core. And this is rotating, it's electrically charged, and it has an oblate spheroidal shape, just like the description. So if you can imagine, that is what's going on in that physical experiment we see on the right, producing exactly the same type of field structure. And there you go, that's our a vortical electromagnetic field going around in the red tor there, which is producing the overall structure, which is the oblate spheroidal sphere. And if you wound that up too high, I believe it will do what is in this Defense Intelligence Reference document and cause an intra-universe wormhole. And it'll flip to a different position. I think it was following the field lines of the Earth, depending on how much it was spun up. So it went there, and then it came back. So in my view, we have a full explanation that is compliant with the theory and explains all the observables. Was it made up? I don't know. Maybe the guy was a fraud, but he was very creative, which means he remote viewed the actual truth. So, wormholes in the lab. Dr. Takaaki Matsumoto, this is how he thought his process worked. You have matter collapse into a point of electronuclear collapse, and then it produces a wormhole through which the matter travels, and it comes out and forms newly synthesized matter. We have observed this in cavitation of Benjamin Huang. The matter went into a coherent core in this subtor structure, and when it failed, the matter came out of that wormhole and bloomed into that beautiful structure of new elements. Tesla knew about it. He had his flower of life perfectly cut off, the Holy Grail there, cut off of the Visa Capices, exactly where we have this sample, which you'll be able to observe. The matter is going through a wormhole. There's nothing you can see on that. And it's going through, punctured through a hole, and leaves a splat on this. Exactly and precisely as you see in the bottom right-hand corner with the sacred geometry. I have the physical example of a wormhole here that you can touch. You can see it in the top left there, the material that's scooped from one side, fluidized, but it's not fluidized on the edge. But this piece of metal is, just like the Hutchison effect, folding on the apple boundary, on the non-radiating boundary. Okay, so we're going to talk about propulsion now. This is also in the Rhodes, in the Grand Master's house. It's the Gorgon Medusa in the center. What did she do? Anyone put their hands up? What did she do? What did she claim to do? Turn people to stone, or stop their electrons from functioning completely. So they couldn't move through time, and if you tried to move them, they're as hard as rock because you can't even shift the electrons through moving them. They're biological stone. And around it you have 24 subsections, and it's called a imbricated shield, which means it's interlaced with another 24. That makes 48. Interesting, right? So Winston Bostick in 1958 said he could reach Mars in 15 to 20 hours with accelerated plasma out of a propulsion device. So I ran the maths on that. Mars and Earth align every 26 months, and there are 4 oppositions in a decade. That is when Mars and Earth are closest together. That's when they're only 54 million miles apart. Okay? And when you run the maths at 2.5 million miles an hour, not looking at acceleration and deceleration, you end up with a time of 21 hours. So they were pretty close. But it is the optimum situation. If you wanted to do it in 2 days, which has been recently reported, and we'll show that, you can do that for 1,526 days out of the 10-year period. So you do have to plan when you go to Mars, otherwise you make your job harder for yourself. Who likes Earth? Is there anyone in the room that would like to live out the rest of their life on Mars? Right, so, you. Do you have a reason? Is it so bad here? Was it my talk? What? Oh, you can change that without going to Mars, you know. Okay, so I talked about these magnetohydrodynamic propulsion system from 1967 last year. I also talked about Mark McCandlish's work, and I showed that here on the top right, the 48 subdivisions of the capacitor array phase up and down with the 8 subdivisions vertically. It produces a plasma in the environment around it, and that is how that device will move around. And the reason it floats off the ground is the same reason Tesla cut his Holy Grail off at a very particular point. It's actually represented on here precisely why. And that's why it floats. It just because the interaction is only at that point. And I show it on that diagram on the top right. The British Railways Board in 1970 produced this. They had a nuclear reactor producing their ions so they could work in space as well. Again, you've got a phased array around the outside to manipulate the magnetohydrodynamics. And I showed this, which was shared in August 1979. It was at a conference before, but this is within 1 month of my father showing me these structures in the sky. My father was a top mason in the UK, and he was also had many friends in the British Navy. In this particular document, it has everything that they said in Congress over the last several years. So it talks about UFO studies here and how they have to have a very fast system to get here if we've got these aliens. These aliens that they're saying that they observe and study prior to 1979, right? They're saying they must have a system to get here that is outside of our understanding. It goes on, UFOs are often observed to disappear instantaneously. In a subset of these cases, the UFO later appears at a nearby location, implying a disappearance and a reappearance into our space-time. I'm going to hazard a guess at that, and it's nothing you've ever heard before. Or, you've all heard it before, and I'm the last one to know. The high-speed, right-angle turns, abrupt stops, accelerations of UFOs, and the absence of sonic booms, despite calculated speeds of 22,000 miles per hour, suggest that UFOs may generate artificial gravitational field. Down there, he calls it electromagnetic or hydromagnetic processes. That's the old word for magnetohydrodynamics. This guy, A.C. Holt, with this paper you can download from NASA's website, he went on to run their propulsion programs. So I don't know whether this was his elevator pitch, but it worked. So in 2017, the CIA released some documents, and I went immediately there, and I published this out of those documents, A Flight to Alpha Centauri. And they say the process, they were reporting this in 1992. They said the process we use is the same as cold fusion, but that's a poor cousin to it, right? And they said we can extract the energy from metal, and if you haven't seen my Japanese post presentation, I will be going through that on Monday for those that are here, and you will understand how that works. And they said 1 kilo of iron is enough for a trip to Alpha Centauri. And the system that extracts the hidden energy from within the metal is the propulsion system, and it allows you to get there in 6 years. So I ran the numbers. I said many years ago, so it was 2017, I said you needed to run at 0.8 of the speed of light. Okay, assuming we don't want to go over the speed of light. You need to get up to that speed, you need to cruise, and you need to decelerate to get to your destination. So to complete the 4.37 light year journey to Alpha Centauri in 6 Earth years, and cruising at 0.8 C, you need a constant proper acceleration of approximately 1.81 G. That's it. You need to do that for 0.7164 years on the way up and on the way down. Okay? That is very close to the number that was reported by Brilliant Light Power this week. Okay, so you can do this. We can be in another solar system using this type of technology that's being claimed even this week. But it's been claimed before. Because Eugene Podkletnov saw a production of force of hundreds of pounds. That's exactly what was reported this week. And what you've got is you've got a superconductor YBCO. It spins round. It produces fluidized electrons that are quantized into their own little vortices. Why? Because that has a magnetic monopole at the core. It's the structure I showed you from the Wisniewski paper. Then he uses a Marx generator. It produces a pulse through. Those self-organize into a torus, a fractal torus, and they hit the target. That's basically what was being done in that paper today, this week rather, and it comes out as a beam that has this hundreds of pounds force, but also travels at 64 times the speed of light. By the way. So this is what Brilliant Light Powers claims. They have a piece of aluminium foil, that's very important, at the bottom. They have a glass beaker, and as it's going up towards the glass beaker, it produces this force, which is hundreds of pounds of lift in a standard microwave, with an aluminium foil and a piece of glass over the top. And they are saying down the bottom, 2 days to Mars. So this is my proposal. Get your number 2 pencils out or whatever. This is the first of the documents that I found in the Matsumoto archive. It's called Power from Small Suns. I will read you. The plasma stays in a small confined space. Heat and electric power can be extracted from the plasma on an as-needed basis to power any device from a small lawnmower to a small water heater, all the way up to a large system that supplies electricity power for many cities. The resulting fusion energy swirls into a spherical ball that creates its own self-holding magnetohydrodynamic effect in a stable shape. This is called fusion-powered ball lightning. I literally have this document and the envelope. It was sent to Dr. Takaaki Matsumoto on the post-dated envelope. It was sent to President Bill Clinton, the correspondence director of Al Gore, all of the major labs, LLNL, Lawrence Livermore, Los Alamos, Joint Propulsion Laboratory, NASA, Arthur C. Clarke, Dr. Edmund Storms, Dr. George H. Miley, the founding editor of Fusion Technology. I could go on. This is what it's referring to. This was also sent to Matsumoto. Read it, it's saying the 8th of the 2nd, 1995, the patent application was put in, but this document was left California on the 21st of August, 1995. In the right-hand side, it shows not a very good diagram of what a magnetohydrodynamic structure vortex is, and they say that that is the thing that's doing the work, and the fusion occurs in the core. That is correct. That is the phase singularity. I would rather not have to repeat inventing the wheel. It really pissed me off to see this, but it did not surprise me. So we could have had probably unlimited energy for the last 30 years. And you think of all the people that have died because of that. All of the inconvenience we've all had. I'm furious about this, actually. And there was this same document you see here was reported in Stephen Krivitz's news sheet, and it came out in September, as little as 1 week after this was sent from California to Dr. Takaaki Matsumoto. And in it, or a supporting document trying to transfer the science, in it, it says down the bottom, at the time this went to press, this document is being bumped up to the US Department of Energy and Department of Defense for classification review. You cannot find the patent from which this is an abstract. It was classified. People thought they knew better than you, and to take this away from you. How does that make you feel? Okay, so there's a close-up. So the important thing is to have a 6-order structure, okay? And that's because it produces a tight beam in the core. Okay, on the bottom right here, you've got the 6-order structures on the inside of Malcolm Bendel's thunderstorm generator that was here last year. Ken Shoulders described pretty much how to do this in 2004. If you read that document there, you go to that link down the bottom, bit.ly.kenlsp, it pretty much describes how to do this in 2004. Maybe it was because no one was listening to him and his papers were not published or listened to, that he thought he'd go nuclear. So, this is it. Take a photo of this slide, guys, just in case. I want you to be ambassadors for this information, right? With the 2 papers that I've shown you before, both of which are published. I published the ones that I got from Dr. Matsumoto, and the other one you can find on the link that I gave you in the previous slide. You need a fused quartz sphere. Ken Shoulders refers this to a dielectric. When a ball lightning, a natural ball lightning, comes towards a piece of dielectric, it charges it, and that therefore repels it from its gradient on its non-radiating boundary. This is exercised in the expired Chukhanov paper, Kirill Chukhanov, for creating quantum coherent macro objects. So Shoulders and Eagly, I've done the Eagly plasma experiments. So that is your containment, your principal containment. You need to keep it operational so that it does not break up and produce substructures that will bore through that. This will fail safe, it will break. You need to turn it on and leave it running forever. Between 1 and 4 millimeter inner diameter. Why? Because of this. The fluidized electron material that was produced on this Vega Valley sample I have here in my hands, The channels are about 1 millimeter. And when you run the mass, that is the electron ion plasma you need to create the required field in the core where the magic happens of 10 to the 11 to 10 to the 15 Teslas. Remember, I don't care how many Teslas you need. This is accruing until it works to cause color disconfinement of baryons. This produces a thing called a quark-gluon plasma, specifically an electron quark-gluon plasma, and this is the most superfluid thing that is known to mainstream science, ever. And so when this produces a self-similar magnetohydrodynamic structure, it self-sustains. You can remove all energy from it, and it typically lasts for about 2 days. So you can spin something up, you can have it running, and then you can have those ARVs running without being turned on for 2 days. You can get on them, they're still floaty, you know, they're floating above the ground there because the quark-gluon plasma is going on in that core, and it's producing the field structures to make this work. You need a homogeneous magnetic field. This was found in Paul Collock's ball lightning plasma generating patent from 1973, well past. Joseph Papp's work. He had a homogeneous magnetic field. In the Cooley-Bennett paper that I just showed you that was classified in 1995, it's in the expired Chukhanov paper, and it's also around that thing in the Podkletnov gravity impulse generator. None of this can be patented. You hear what I'm telling you? We have freaking magic in our hands. You sprinkle lithium aluminium deuteride in there. This was used by Pons and Fleischmann. We actually have one of their original vessels of the material they were using in the 1990s for cold fusion experiment. Why deuterium? Well, because it confused to helium, it doesn't make tritium, so it just plays nice with the authorities, right? If you make tritium, everyone starts knocking on your door. You probably shouldn't be making that. Okay? If you look at Castle Bravo, that's the biggest nuclear bomb that was ever detonated by the nuclear atmospheric test. And everyone thinks the extra energy came from the lithium, 60% lithium-7 that was in there. It's normally 92.5% lithium-7, and they concentrated the lithium-6 because they thought that was the active component. It produced a much bigger blast. They go, and they think it's the lithium-7. I don't think that. It may be part of it. I think it's the 49% of that bomb, which was aluminium. Third most abundant element in the periodic table in the Earth's crust. So they had lithium deuteride. That was the main fuel in there that they thought was going to be the main fuel. Then they had aluminium, and then they had normal uranium, not enriched uranium, and then a plutonium trigger. And so this bomb, you can leave it on the shelf for 1,000 years, and then you can still go boom and do the biggest bomb you've ever done in the US atmospheric testing, right? But what we've got in here is lithium aluminium deuteride, a standard reagent used in chemical factories producing all kinds of products. And I think the lithium component, the deuterium component, aluminium component were a major part of the fusion fuel in Castle Bravo. But of course, we're working on an incredibly small scale, and we haven't got a fission trigger, and it's doing very, very small numbers of processes. So you have to play safe with this. This isn't one of those things where you're going to get more by turning up. You're just going to have an accident, right? You need very small amounts. I mean, ridiculously small amounts, laughably small amounts. It's a piece of dust, and if you sneezed, it'd be away, right? And that's the fuel, okay? You sprinkle in a little carbon-60, little buckyballs. They are perfect charge carriers to get the process going. That is in this patent, which was classified. Now, it also was suggested before this information came light, Tesla's carbon button light bulb. Why? Because carbon was the only thing that he could find that was able to withstand etheric matter bombardment. Aluminium was the element that he found produced the most etheric matter. So we've got aluminium and carbon going in there. And that's in Tesla's work. It's in Cooley-Bennett. It's the basis of Eagly's work, our work, and Anatoly Klimov, who created the laser that comes out of the front of a hypersonic weapon or craft and produces a plasma in front of it. That guy, Anatoly Klimov, he recently reported that for more than a couple of decades, more than a quarter of a century, they've been adding carbon as their main component in their fuel. You need 0 to 600 hertz of phased high DIDT discharges and restrict the voltage to below 2000 volts. That's why you need it small, so that you can produce a dielectric barrier discharge in a small volume, okay? You don't need anything but air in there. You don't need to worry about things like overcomplicated vacuum. And 0 to 600 hertz was used, I think, at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base with Franklin B. Meade, when they were trying to create a gravitational pulse. And the only way they could do it, the only part of the test that worked, was that when they had a small electrode firing against a flat electrode, they were creating EVOs. And they had a 0 to 600 hertz. Every single thing I'm showing you on here is not patentable. I could have made a patent, but then that would be my ego talking. Electromagnetic or sound stimulation, as in Kolok's, Chukhanov's, and Eagly's patent. And then 6 tungsten electrodes. Most of what you're seeing there, the basic structure, was actually described by Ken Shoulders in 2004. In particular, the 6 electrodes. Why do you need 6? It produces the cell unit of the flower of life. It's the first time that the disruption beam goes into the tor, into the apple on the way round. So it produces a closed structure. It produces a perfect magnetohydrodynamic structure. And that is, my friends, how you do this. And this will create propulsion. Absurd levels of propulsion. A little thing, a couple of millimeters across. And when you direct those things, you can point their beams into each other and it produces the next tor up. So you can make a bigger structure disappear. So teleportation. The long form of the word television is telecommunication vision. The term derives from Greek word tele, meaning far, and the Latin word visio, meaning sight. Sounds like remote viewing, doesn't it? Referring to the technology that transmits moving images and sound over a distance. You need to capture, encode, record, broadcast, get a reception, decode, and present. I think it's a little bit easier what we want to do. It works on here. There's our Gorgon stare. Turning us to stone. So how can we actually teleport? Well, you can do it perceptually. That is to say, you cannot perceive the ellipse time for the distance traveled. To you, it is basically teleportation. You can do it relatively. That is, our friend Medusa freezes all the electrons in your body, which appears, in my view, to happen in some of these structures. Because it changes the space-time metric of epsilon 0, and so electrons behave completely differently, time behaves differently inside the non-radiating boundary, and it's variable. So there's places you'd want to be where you don't get turned into mush, right? And that is where people are sitting in those ARVs. If you move a little bit out, or the fields go a bit wonky, you'll turn to mush. So you need to get this right. Well, actually, that is 0 time delay regardless of distance. So, Ken Shoulders, S.V. Adamenko, and all the way back in the 1980s, John Bockris observed when you go over, say, 3,000 volts and you have a dielectric barrier, you produce a discharge that travels at 1/10 the speed of light. EVOs can easily travel, exotic vacuum objects discovered by Ken Shoulders can easily travel at 1/10 the speed of light, and this is a scale invariant structure. So the structures themselves produce inertia free because the medium that causes inertia to you just goes around these structures. It gets pulled apart and moved around the back. It helps push up the back and it feeds the extra energy up the arse of the structure as it's moving forward. And so this produces inertia-free transports. You do not perceive the acceleration and the deceleration when you're in this device. No perception of motion, so you have no idea you've moved. And it presents no charge. The charge of the particles inside are not presented to the material world outside. So there's no interaction with matter. So you have the ability to go through the Earth. And at 1/10 of the speed of light, experimentally observed over many decades, you can get, ignoring the acceleration and deceleration because that's not an issue. You are instantly traveling at that speed using this variation of the understanding. You can get to the other side of the planet, wherever you are, that's like the furthest point away if you're going to go round, in 0.425 of a second, which means it's a blink and a half. Right, there you're there. Did you perceive it? Because you didn't perceive the motion. You didn't perceive any interaction, any shudders. you got the other side of the Earth. If you go round the Earth, you have to wait for 2 blinks, like there. So, who said they wanted to live on Earth? Everyone but that guy who hates his job. So if you want to live here, we are that far away from having teleportation, which can get you at any point on the planet in an imperceptible time, which is effectively 0 time. So I'd like to thank the organisers of the Cosmic Summit 2025, all of the contributors to the MFMP, all of the researchers and volunteers that have worked with the MFMP, my colleagues past and present, especially Matthew, Ryan, Alan, Henk and Sho, supporters of my personal blog at remoteview.icu, and the big donors Charles, Stephen, Goran, Uran, and other donors, big and small. So thank you very much for your time. I'll take some questions. I think I've got 1 or 2 minutes. Okay, yes?
So if you're going to travel around the Earth to another point, what about your suitcases?
They can go in the bubble with you.
Oh, so everything.
So she's asking, if you're going to travel somewhere, can you take your luggage? Yes. It does. Yeah, but that's for those guys. It's not for the little guys, right? Yeah, we want to bring this to the little guys. Yeah, we'll start with the energy. Once you've got the energy, you can get yourself a drone. I mean, if you've got unlimited energy, you can make your own drone and fly anywhere you like. Because you don't have the problem of it falling out the sky, do you? Well, that's another way. You astral project yourself to somewhere else. Okay. I have a telekinesis and telepathy device which you can play with on Monday and see how good you are. Oh, I'm absolutely sure. I mean, they classified this in 1995. Why would they not have derivative technology? At the back there, give your name and shout, because I have to repeat the question for those on the stream. Hello, people on the stream.
My name's Anshin. My question is, of the theories you presented, which one was the hardest to believe or wrap your mind around that you now do?
So the question is, which was the hardest theory? The hardest theory was that they would have this technology and not tell people. That was, for me, disgusting, actually. Disgusting. That there was someone who thought they were too important to share this with humanity. Yeah, so it's not so much a theory, it's human nature. I can understand it, and I said in 2017, I can understand why you would do this, because you thought you were protecting people. Because there's nothing left in Pandora's box but hope. And they've been giving us the last great evil of hope, which is to say, oh, fusion technology will be here in 20 years. Fusion technology will be here in 20 years. Fusion technology will be here in 20 years. That's hopium. That is a very bad evil, and it's the last evil left. And they've brought that out, and they've been using it for many, many years. Sorry, yep.
Thank you, Bob. In your opinion, why aren't we doing this? Is it because we can only do it on the right row?
You do turn to mush if you get it wrong.
Correct.
So you're going to go...
Well, you seem like you got the answer. Well, I was just wondering, would we turn to mush?
I would start with things that we do teleport, but they tend to turn to mush. So, like, you have to build the right structure and play nicely with the system. So she was asking, like, why don't we do this? And I'm saying it's my turn to mush.
I was just going to say, Lockheed Martin engineer Larry Reed wrote about you. Just this sentence, the faster than light beam forming geometry illustrated and based on the plasmoid fractal toroidal geometry identified by Grenier. So it's, I guess, national.
Yeah. So this is Larry Reed, who's been following my work, and he's a very good mathematician, and he can see that what we're observing in the lab actually explains how you can go faster than light. And I would agree with, he's got a couple of things wrong in the interpretation of what's going on in the lab, but the overall hypothesis, I believe, is accurate.
And then I would just say, would you rather be in China since they're releasing cool technology publicly?
Yeah, I mean, this is a thing. Like, I put this out here now, and it's off to the races. And it's not just me saying it, it's Ken Shoulder said it in 2004, over 2 decades ago. It's just, people couldn't, to answer your question, people couldn't believe that. They couldn't think that this could produce unlimited energy. But what I've shown you is that the US government or some people in the US security services classified the technology in 1995, which is equivalent to what Ken Shoulders is describing in 2004.
The reason it's classified is because of fear, which is
Yeah, I mean, it strikes fear into you.
which is trauma.
Yeah.
It runs in the background of
Yeah.
everybody's mind,
Yeah.
and they think about the worst case scenario.
I wrote a lot of documents for my brother's invention in the early 2000s about how drones would change warfare, and I see literally everything I wrote actually happening on the battlefield. So I really feel this when I'm making a decision to tell you guys.
Fear and greed are the same thing.
Yeah.
It's a negative energy.
Yeah.
Well, we
Well,
need to be positive, and I think that's my mic's off because it's the end of my talk.
thank you. Come on Monday if you possibly can, and we'll talk about more how this works, and you can see the sample.